The breaking point, the emergency session of the Galactic Federation Council, buzzed with tension as representatives from 43 species filled the massive chamber. Captain Sarah Chun sat in the human delegation section, her jaw clenched as she listened to the heated debates echoing through the crystalline hall. The universal translators worked overtime, converting clicks, hisses, harmonics, and electromagnetic pulses into understandable speech. At the center of the circular chamber, a holographic display showed the devastating reality of the Void War. Entire star systems had gone dark, consumed by an enemy that seemed to eat light itself. The Corvani hegemony, one of the Federation's most powerful members, had lost 3 core worlds in the past month alone. Xyloth Prime 7, the current council leader, stood at the central podium. The crystalline being's body pulsed with deep purple light, indicating extreme stress. The situation has deteriorated beyond our worst projections, Xyloth announced, his voice resonating through the chamber like struck crystal. The void entities have adapted to our quantum weapons. Our predictive algorithms cannot track their movement patterns. We face extinction. Commander Marcus Rivera, Sarah's military liaison, leaned forward in his seat. Captain, they're going to ask for our help again, he whispered. After everything they've said about our methods, Sarah nodded grimly. For 37 years, humanity had served the Federation faithfully. When the plague of Xerion threatened to wipe out the agricultural worlds, human doctors had developed a cure in record time. When the Theta Rebellion nearly tore apart the outer systems, human negotiators had brokered peace. When the first void incursions began, human tacticians had developed the only effective containment strategies. Yet every victory came with a C. Same response from the Council. Crude but effective. Primitive solutions. Acceptable for a developing species. The condescension never ended. Ambassador Thyses of the Saurian Republic stood to address the chamber. The reptilian diplomat's forked tongue flicked nervously as he spoke. Perhaps we should consider alternative approaches. The humans have shown some success against the void entities. A chorus of dismissive sounds filled the chamber. General Korax of the Mantari Collective clicked his mandibles in annoyance. The humans use brute force tactics. They sacrifice elegance for results. Their methods may work in the short term, but they lack sophistication. Dr. Elena Kowalski, sitting beside Sarah, muttered under her breath. Sophistication doesn't save lives. Xyloth's crystalline form flickered with agitation. Nevertheless, we must examine all options. Captain Shun, would humanity be willing to share your methods with the Council? Sarah stood slowly, feeling the weight of dozens of alien gazes upon her. Honored Council members, humanity has been sharing our methods for nearly 4 decades. We've submitted detailed reports, provided training programs, and offered joint operations. Each time, our contributions have been dismissed as unsuitable for civilized warfare. The ethereal collective's representative, a being of pure energy contained within a shimmering field, pulsed with what might have been amusement. Human tactics lacked the precision of proper strategy. Your species approaches problems like wild animals, with instinct rather than intellect. Those instincts have saved millions of lives, Commander Rivera interjected, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had fought in every major conflict of the past 2 decades. Saved lives through acceptable losses, countered the Vorthan. Delegate, a being whose multiple heads spoke in unison. Your species accepts casualties that proper planning could prevent. Sarah felt something cold settle in her chest. Acceptable losses? We've lost more human soldiers protecting Federation worlds than any other species. We've evacuated your colonies, defended your trade routes, and contained your disasters. And you call our sacrifices acceptable losses? The chamber fell silent. Even the constant hum of translation devices seemed to fade. Xyloth's light dimmed slightly. Captain Shun, please. Emotions cloud judgment. We must focus on the current crisis. Before Sarah could respond, an urgent chime echoed through the chamber. A holographic display materialized, showing a human fleet commander with burns across half his face. Council, this is Admiral Thompson at the Kepler defense line. The void entities have broken through. They're heading for the Centauri colonies. We need immediate evacuation support for 60 million civilians. The chamber erupted in panicked discussions. Species representatives began calculating resource allocation, evacuation schedules, and defensive priorities. The debate stretched on for precious minutes while civilians faced extinction. Sarah had heard enough. She activated her personal communicator. Admiral Thompson, this is Captain Shun. Execute Operation Shepherd. All human vessels are authorized. To begin immediate civilian evacuation, use whatever means necessary. Captain. Xyloth's voice cracked like breaking crystal. You cannot authorize unilateral action. The Council must approve all military operations. The Council can debate while people die, Sarah replied coldly. Humanity will act while you discuss proper procedures. Over the next 72 hours, human forces evacuated 58 million. Civilians from the Centauri colonies. They used every transport vessel, converted cargo ships, and even pressed luxury liners into service. The evacuation was messy, chaotic, and completely successful. It was also completely unauthorized. The emergency session reconvened. The charges were already prepared. The Council had spent more time preparing their case against humanity than planning the evacuation that never came. The human delegation stands accused of violating Federation protocols, Xyloth announced, his crystalline form now pulsing with cold blue light, unauthorized military action, failure to follow proper evacuation procedures, damage to Federation assets. Sarah stared at the formal charges displayed on the holographic screen. Damage to Federation assets? Your forces commandeered civilian vessels without proper authorization, General Corax clicked accusingly. Your evacuation procedures caused damage to several ships. Your methods were crude and inefficient. Our methods saved 58 million lives, Commander Rivera stood, his voice carrying the fury of a soldier who had watched his friends die for ungrateful allies. At what cost? The ethereal collective's representative pulsed with righteous indignation. Proper procedures exist for a reason. Your chaos could have resulted in greater casualties. Dr. Kowalski laughed bitterly. Greater casualties than everyone. Dying? The point is irrelevant, Ambassador Theises interjected. The Federation cannot function if member species act unilaterally. Rules exist to maintain order. Rules exist to maintain control, Sarah said quietly. You don't want solutions. You want compliance. The debate that followed was entirely predictable. The Council praised the lives saved while condemning the methods used. They acknowledged human effectiveness while criticizing human approach. They needed human results while rejecting human autonomy. The final vote was unanimous among non-human members. Humanity would be placed on probationary status, subject to increased oversight and restricted operational authority. Sarah Chon stood as the vote was announced, her expression unreadable. The chamber fell silent, waiting for her response. Honored Council members, she began, her voice carrying clearly through the vast chamber. Humanity has served the Federation faithfully for 37 years. We have bled for your worlds, died for your causes, and sacrificed our own interests. For the greater good, we have asked for nothing in return except the respect due to equal partners. She paused, looking around the chamber at the assembled representatives of 43 species. That respect has been denied. Today, you have made it clear that humanity will never be seen as equal partners, only as useful servants. You want Our solutions, but not our methods. You want our sacrifice, but not our autonomy. You want our service, but not our voice. The silence stretched on, broken only by the gentle hum of life support systems. Therefore, the human delegation formally withdraws from the Galactic Federation, effective immediately. All human personnel will be recalled from Federation space. Within 6 months, all human assets will be transferred to Earth control. All mutual defense agreements are hereby terminated. The chamber erupted in shocked sounds and flashing lights. Some representatives stood, others flickered with agitation, and a few simply sat in stunned silence. Xyloth's crystalline form blazed with urgent light. Captain Shun, you cannot be serious. The Federation needs human expertise. The Void War continues. Surely we can reach an accommodation. Sarah gathered her files and stood to leave. The Federation has made its position clear. Humanity is not sophisticated enough to be trusted with real authority. We're too crude, too primitive, too emotional. Well, honored council members, you're about to discover what sophisticated warfare looks like without crude human methods. As the human delegation filed out of the chamber, Ambassador Theises called after them. Captain Shun, please reconsider. The Federation can be reasonable. Adjustments can be made. Sarah paused at the chamber's exit. 37 years of service. Millions of lives saved. Countless crises resolved. And you call offering us basic respect an adjustment? She shook her head. No, Ambassador. It's too late for adjustments. The time for respect was before you needed it. The massive doors of the council chamber closed behind the human delegation with a finality that seemed to echo through the crystalline halls. For the first time in nearly 4 decades, humanity was walking away from galactic civilization. Behind them, the council. Chamber buzzed with nervous energy as representatives tried to process what had just happened. The Void War raged on. Trade routes remained vulnerable, and colony worlds faced countless challenges. And for the first time since joining the Federation, they would face these challenges without humanity's crude, primitive, and brutally effective solutions. Asterisk the reckoning. 6 months had passed since the human delegation walked out of the Federation Council chamber. Captain Sarah Chun stood on the observation deck of the transport vessel Exodus, watching the last human outpost in the Vega sector power down its lights. The evacuation was nearly complete. Final transport is away from Research Station Kepler. Commander Rivera reported, his voice carrying the weight of abandoning 30 years of scientific work. All personnel accounted for. Station is sealed and encrypted. Sarah nodded, watching the distant lights of the station fade to black. Behind them, they left laboratories full of partially completed research, medical facilities that had saved countless alien lives, and defensive installations that had protected 3 star systems from pirate raids. Status report on the other. Sectors? She asked. Mining operations in the asteroid belt Delta have been shut down. The Montari Collective tried to restart them with their own workers, but they've already had 2 major accidents. The Saurian Republic is requesting technical assistance for the agricultural worlds we helped establish, the Corvani hegemony. Rivera paused, consulting his tablet. The Corvani hegemony is demanding we return to finish the terraforming project on New Corvin. Demanding? Sarah's eyebrow rose slightly. They claim we're in breach of contract. They're threatening legal action through Federation courts. Sarah turned away from the viewport. They can threaten all they want. Earth's legal department has already terminated all contracts due to the Federation's decision to place us on probationary status. Breach of contract works both ways. Dr. Kowalski entered the observation deck, her usually immaculate appearance disheveled from overseeing the evacuation of medical facilities. Sarah, I just received word from the Centauri Medical Center. They're facing a crisis. The Zephyrian plague has mutated, and they can't adapt the treatment we developed. Not our problem anymore, Sarah replied, though her voice carried a note of regret. 60,000 people are infected. They're asking for our help. Sarah was quiet for a long moment. Elena, remember what General Korak said about our medical methods? Crude trial and error rather than proper scientific analysis. Remember how they rejected our proposal for a rapid response medical team because it didn't follow their protocols? I remember. They wanted sophisticated medical responses. Let them use their sophisticated methods. The weeks that followed brought a steady stream of crisis reports from across the Federation. The Void War had stalled without human tactical innovation. The entities had adapted to Federation strategies, but the sophisticated alien minds couldn't develop new approaches fast enough to counter them. 3 more star systems had been consumed. Trade routes that had operated smoothly for decades began experiencing massive disruptions. Human merchant captains had possessed an almost supernatural ability to navigate the complex political and economic landscape of interspecies commerce. They could negotiate with anyone, adapt to any situation, and find creative solutions to seemingly impossible problems. Without them, trade disputes escalated into trade wars. Shipping delays became systemic failures. The intricate web of galactic commerce began to unravel. On the industrial world of Mechanicus Prime, production had ceased entirely. The automated systems that the Federation had always praised for their efficiency couldn't adapt to changing conditions. When raw material compositions varied, when supply chains were disrupted, when unexpected problems arose, the sophisticated systems simply stopped working. Human engineers had always been the ones to crawl into the machinery, figure out what was wrong, and jury-rig solutions that kept everything running. They called it thinking outside the box, though the alien administrators had always called it unprofessional deviation from standard procedures. Commander Rivera briefed Sarah on the latest intelligence reports as their transport approached the Sol system. The ethereal collective tried to take over the defense grid for the Outer Rim. They lasted exactly 48 hours before the pirates started hitting convoys. Their energy-based defenses are too predictable. And the Mantari response? They're demanding we return to our posts. They're calling our withdrawal, abandonment of duty, and threatening economic sanctions against Earth. Sarah almost laughed. Economic sanctions? They're going to impose economic sanctions on the species that handles 60% of their logistics? It gets better. The Vorthan Assembly is offering to hire us as military contractors at double our previous salary. They want to keep it quiet, though. They're calling it technical consultation. Of course they are. They can't admit they need our crude methods, but they can't survive without them either. A transport shuddered slightly as it entered Earth's gravity well. Through the viewport, Sarah could see the blue-green world that had given birth to humanity's stubborn, adaptable, infuriatingly effective species. Sarah. Dr. Kowalski's voice was urgent. We're receiving a priority transmission from the Federation Council. They're requesting immediate talks, Sarah sighed. Put it through. The holographic display flickered to life, revealing Xyloth Prime 7's crystalline form. The council leader's usual purple glow had faded to a dim blue, and cracks were visible along his faceted surface. Captain Chun, Xyloth began, his voice lacking its usual authoritative resonance. The Federation Council formally requests your presence for emergency negotiations. Negotiations regarding what, exactly? The current ... difficulties facing the Federation. We believe there may have been misunderstandings regarding humanity's status within our organization. Sarah studied the hologram. Behind Xyloth, she could see other council members, their various forms of communication creating a cacophony of desperation. Misunderstandings? The probationary status was perhaps poorly conceived. The council. is prepared to discuss alternative arrangements. What kind of alternatives? Xyloth's form brightened slightly. Full membership restoration. Expanded operational authority. Increased resource allocation. The Council recognizes that humanity's contributions have been ... undervalued. Commander Rivera stepped forward. What about the Void War? The trade disruptions? The colony failures? Temporary. Setbacks, Xyloth replied, though his light flickered with uncertainty. The Federation is a resilient organization. We will adapt. Sarah was quiet for a long moment. Xyloth, in the 6 months since we left, how many star systems have you lost? To the void entities? 7 systems have experienced difficulties. How many trade routes have been disrupted? Shipping delays are within acceptable parameters. How many colonies have requested emergency evacuation? Xyloth's form dimmed further. The situation is challenging, but not insurmountable. Dr. Kowalski leaned into the transmission. Xyloth, I've been monitoring the medical crisis reports. The Zephyrian plague has spread to 12 systems. The Corvani Collective is facing a complete agricultural collapse. The Montari mining operations have had 17 major accidents. How exactly is this acceptable? These are growing pains as we adapt to new operational procedures. Sarah stood, her decision made. Xyloth, I want you to listen carefully. For 37 years, humanity served the Federation faithfully. We asked for nothing except to be treated as equal partners. Instead, we were treated as useful servants. Our methods were dismissed as crude, our thinking as primitive, our contributions as acceptable from a developing species. She paused, looking directly at the holographic representation of the being who had presided over humanity's dismissal. Now, 6 months later, the Federation is collapsing without us. The Void War is spreading. Trade is failing. Colonies are dying. And you call this a misunderstanding? You call offering us basic respect an alternative arrangement? Xyloth's crystalline form pulsed with urgent light. Captain Shun, pride cannot be allowed to interfere with practical necessity. The Federation needs human expertise. The Federation needs human expertise, Sarah repeated slowly. Not human partnership, not human equality, not human respect. Just human expertise. The Council is prepared to be generous in recognition of human contributions. Sarah felt something cold and final settle in her chest. No, Xyloth. The time for generosity was before you needed it. The time for recognition was before you were desperate. The time for respect was before it became a practical necessity. She gestured to Commander Rivera, who began shutting down the communication array. Captain Shun, please. Xyloth's voice carried a note of panic. The Federation cannot survive without human participation. Sarah paused, her hand hovering over the communication controls. Then perhaps the Federation shouldn't have spent 4 decades teaching us that we weren't sophisticated enough to be real partners. The transmission ended, leaving the observation deck in silence. Through the viewport, Earth grew larger, its surface covered with the lights of a civilization that had decided to stand alone rather than kneel together. Across the galaxy, the sophisticated species that had built the Federation were learning the difference between intelligence and wisdom. They were learning that being right about methods mattered less than being effective about results. They were learning that elegance without adaptability was just expensive failure. They were learning that treating partners like servants eventually leaves you without partners. Most importantly, they were learning that when you tell someone they're not good enough, they might take you at your word. And by the time you realize you are wrong, it might be too late to fix it. Commander Rivera broke the silence. So what now, Captain? Earth is offering you the position of Colonial Defense Coordinator. We'll be responsible for protecting human space and any species that want to establish proper partnerships. Sarah smiled for the first time in months. Partnership. Not membership. Not service. Partnership. Several species have already expressed interest. The Keplerans want to establish trade agreements. The Tau Ceti colonies are requesting mutual defense pacts. Even some of the smaller Federation numbers are quietly inquiring about human protection. And the Federation? Still demanding that we return to our posts. Still calling our withdrawal abandonment of duty. Still insisting that we're being unreasonable. Sarah nodded, watching Earth's blue surface fill the viewport. Let them demand. Let them call us unreasonable. Let them learn what reasonable looks like when they're facing the consequences of their own sophistication. The transport entered Earth's atmosphere with a gentle shudder. Below them, the lights of humanity's homeworld welcomed them back to a civilization that had chosen dignity over convenience, respect over service, and independence over acceptance. Behind them, the Galactic Federation struggled to maintain order without the crude, primitive, brutally effective species that had held it together for nearly 4 decades. The galaxy was learning that sometimes the most sophisticated response to being undervalued is simply to walk away, and sometimes, by the time they realize what they've lost, it's too late to fix it.